Hey guys, Sarah Ulmer here with Y'all Politics. I'm sitting down with Howard Sherman, who is a Democrat candidate for the U.S. Senate race. We have a runoff coming up on June 26th. He's going to answer a couple of questions about the campaign so far. Howard, thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So tell me a little bit. You've been campaigning, and you won the primary that happened, and now we're going to a runoff. So far, how's the campaign been? How's the feedback from Mississippians been?
So, about 2.5 or 3 weeks before the primary, we hit a tipping point. Because the initial few weeks of the campaign was, who is there? Nobody knew me. Started with zero name recognition, and then all of a sudden, when people got past the, well, he's not here, from here, et cetera, they started to look at the issues. They started to look at the plan. I published my 100-day plan, which is a promise to the state of Mississippi what I'm going to do the first 100 days. We don't have accountability. In the private sector, we have massive accountability, but somehow in politics, we don't. We make promises, and then we never give ourselves a report card. So I literally said, here's what I'm going to do the first 100 days, and then on day 101, I'll give a report card to the people of Mississippi. So when that happened, suddenly people started taking attention, and it built, and it built, and it built, and compared against, I'm running against a career politician. Clearly, we have a lot of career politicians, but in this case, if you've been a career politician for 10 years and we're still at the bottom of the heap, there's something wrong. So people began to come to that, and it culminated in an election day. But that wasn't the first major thing that happened. After the election, my phone was ringing like crazy with supporters of my opponent saying, I didn't vote for you because I didn't think Mississippi was ready for this. I didn't think Mississippi was ready for new. I thought it would just do the same old thing. So the campaign is going great. People are really excited because I'm running on possibility. I'm running on ideas. I'm running on new ways to do it, not the same old.
So you mentioned you got new ideas, a new way of doing things. Talk to me a little bit about why you decided to throw your hat in on politics and to give it a shot, and why you think you're the best person for the job.
Well, I threw my hat in because 2 red lines were crossed. Sela and I'm married to Sela Ward. We started Hope Village for Children 18 years ago. It's in Meridian. It takes care of kids from all over the state, over 3,000 kids. You don't mess with our kids, whether there are 2 biological children or those 3,000 kids. So in December, I get a phone call from the executive director of Hope Village saying, I need you in Jackson on Thursday. I said, what's up? She goes, I'll tell you in the car. So we get in the car, we drive to Jackson. She tells me that the legislature, including the guy I'm running against, voted for a bill called HB 2179, which moved the agency that funds kids from DHS to Child Protective Services. Nobody asked the question, will that impact our funding? So we lost all of our DHS funding, over $50 million. So suddenly there wasn't money for social workers, there wasn't money. They weren't sending us kids because they couldn't afford it. Okay, that's really bad. That's really bad. I'm not saying that my opponent doesn't care about children. I'm saying my opponent didn't think to ask the right questions. So if you're flying an airplane and the plane hits the mountain, it doesn't really matter whether he intended to hit the mountain or he just didn't know what he was doing. Either way, that was the first red line. Went and met with the Democratic Party. I said, how do I get involved? We talked about the 2 races. It became really clear that for somebody with my skill set, the senatorial race was the better match. So I took the papers home, filled them out, wrote the check for $1,000, but didn't send it in because it's a big thing. I'm 63 years old. I've spent my life toiling to support my wife in her career, to raise 2 great kids, to launch countless businesses. I kind of figured I might get to relax. and then the second red line got crossed in February. President Trump signed, with Roger Wicker's support, the Family First Prevention Services Act, which is an act that basically stripped money from children's homes like Hope Village, but worse, raised the conditions, the requirements for those homes such that there's not a single state-funded children's home in a state that satisfies the conditions. So in the current conditions, they all have to close, which means 20 years of work gone for Hope Village. So Tina Aycock is the executive director of Hope Village, and some of the other heads flew to Washington to meet with Roger, and they sat in his office, and he didn't show up for the meeting. They met with his staff, and then he did show up, and he says, I'm sorry, y'all, I need my office. I have another meeting. That's when I sent my form in. Regardless of party, regardless of the issues having to do with kids transcend party. You don't mess with these 6,000 kids whose parents' rights have been terminated. That was when I said, the the methodology that's being employed by politicians on both sides needs to be changed. We need accountability, and we need people with the skill set. I don't know any single private sector person who doesn't think about revenue. And yet, when David voted for a bill, they didn't think about revenue. So the idea is that we're going to inject some private sector people into the equation to bring a different way of managing the biggest enterprises in the world.
Absolutely. So, say things go your way on the 26th, and you do win the runoff, and you go to face Roger Wicker on the ballot in November. Campaign-wise, what are your plans over the summer months to get more name recognition, to get the word out about kind of your platform, as well as looking towards D.C.? I mean, if you're put as the Mississippi U.S. Senator, what do you plan to do?
We rolled two big questions.
I know.
Let me answer the first one first. It's really interesting. So when I published the 100-day plan, my phone rang not just by Democrats. My phone rang with a bunch of Republicans who called me and said, this is leadership. This transcends party. I don't have a problem with a single thing on your piece of paper. Call me when the election's over, because we need to get past we disagree on 15%, agree on 85%, but we hold the 85% hostage while we argue the 15%. So maybe the candidacy gets built on, let's fix the 85%. My 100-day plan is about infrastructure, healthcare, education. Is anybody going to argue that we don't want great schools? Is anybody going to argue that we want to come up with creative ways to have jobs come to the state? So they said, this is the kind of leadership that needs to come from our senator. So the campaign is going to be this very interesting thing of Republicans looking at a different kind of Democrat, a very business-centric, a very progressive, but not progressive in an oppressive way, progressive in a sense of these are things that will enhance the state. So, and then getting to Washington, it's really the same thing. It's showing leadership. Some of these things are private sector solutions, but as the senator, I can support it with public policy, and I can lead the charge. I was sitting with Benny Thompson, Congressman Thompson, in Washington when I was doing my due diligence to find out, does this make any sense? And I went through my ideas for healthcare, which involves medical tourism and telemedicine and low-cost medical diagnostics. We're launching a site called, we have launched Idea Village, Mississippi, to keep our kids here. We need to keep that entrepreneurial spirit here. And he said, that's all good, but those are longer-term solutions. I need jobs now. The unemployment rate in the Delta is twice what it is in the state. And I said, I have an idea, give me a couple weeks. I worked my network of people in the private sector, and I found a corn chip company on the West Coast. I call them up. I have this idea that we rebrand the Delta from the freshest, from just a place that grows stuff for other people to make. So I called the head of the corn chip company, and I said, I need you to open a factory on the edge of a cornfield. He said, why would I do that? I said, because you're probably always looking to differentiate your chips. When I walk into Winn-Dixie or Walmart, there's a million chips. Doritos, Frito-Lay, whatever the case. I said, you can now stamp your bag with the freshest chips in the market from the field to the bag in 48 hours. I'm buying those chips. Right? Who knows how long that grain's been sitting there with Doritos. He said, done. 1,000 jobs. So tell me if that's a Republican idea. Tell me that's a Democrat idea. That's a Mississippi idea. So the value proposition I'll be taking to the state in a match with Roger is that it's not about the party. It's about the state. If we can implement those kind of ideas or infrastructure ideas that go beyond just tax and spend or spend and tax, I think, if by evidence what happened after this election, I think a lot of Republicans are going to say, I want to be Mississippi-centric and not party-centric.
Do you have any words that you'd like to share with your opponent coming up on this June 26th runoff, David Beria?
I think he's really kind of insulting the populace. The populace wants change. They want to know what the future looks like. The voters don't care where I was born. They don't care where the UPS guy is from when he delivers the package, or the person who makes their burger. If the person makes a great burger, bring it on. If the person drops the package off, bring it on. The populace made the statement. When I beat a guy who's been 10 years in the legislature, the minority leader, and a ton of endorsements from his friends, and he lost to a guy who said, I wasn't born here, but I have a way, follow me, let's go, let's join hands, Mississippi, together. I have chosen to live here. Think about that. I've chosen to be in Mississippi in 104-degree temperature in August. That counts for a lot. I'm not here because I was born here and my mama was here and my daddy was here. So I think if he can elevate his campaign to above the assaults on me and really what that does for the state of Mississippi, they'll benefit, the campaign will benefit. Otherwise, we're just in this, I may not have any good ideas, but you don't want him. That didn't work in the last presidential election.
Howard, I do appreciate you sitting down with us today. Don't forget that June 26th runoff is
Please
coming up.
vote. Please
Please
vote.
make sure to get out and vote. Make sure that you are registered to vote. You can do that at y'allvote.com, actually, here in Mississippi. Howard, thank you again, and I do appreciate it. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.